Bernie Sanders, for example, recently suggested cutting 10% from the the Pentagon's budget. And they just approved about $700 billion plus. How much would you slash it? By how much percent? What would you do with it exactly?
Zero. We're ending the Department of Defense, period. And we're going to invest in a Department of Peace, but naturally that's going to cost considerably less because it costs less financially to build peace than it does to feed the military-industrial complex. The reality is, for us to engage in purposeful peace building across the globe, what it really requires is political courage. It requires morality. It requires character, and that is free. Now, that is not to say that there won't be expenditures involved in trying to help other countries improve quality of life across the globe with their consent, with us working as equals, with us working as an international global effort, not this kind of imperialist, soft imperialist form of supposed helping that various administrations have attempted to engage in. All of that is going to cost in a budgetary sense much less, but it's going to impact the world in powerful ways that will bring meaningful value to what our administration would do.
Yes, completely agree with your sentiment because, not only can the United States play a very supportive role in terms of international affairs and diplomacy, but they should because as the world's foremost superpower, they claim to be, the beacon of freedom and democracy, but we don't see a lot of that, and it's usually just a world policing instead.
Exactly.
They also support the endeavors of countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey. I mean, how do you see these relationships being maintained or changed throughout the course of a Hunter presidency?
We need to call to account human rights abusers across the globe. And those that this country has counted as allies, that this country has been culpable in the abuses of, this country needs to atone for. And there needs to be honesty and reconciliation about that, akin to similar historical truth and reconciliation efforts. This country, alongside those allies, has a lot to answer for. Israel, for instance, is a particular issue that is one that's a serious one for our campaign. You may or may not know, for those of your viewers out there, just to give you some background, I was very vocal early on this campaign about my opposition to genocide happening in Palestine. And that caused me to lose my job as a rabbi because of it. I'm very proud of that stance. I wouldn't have changed a thing about it. But what it illustrates is the massive amount of pressure, political and societal, reaching to every aspect of human endeavor, even the job of a simple town rabbi. That pressure, that enormous pressure, is something that it's going to take a massive amount of pressure to dismantle. And we're committed to doing that, to dismantling the vestiges of imperialism, dismantling the vestiges of colonialism wherever they appear, whether it is here in the United States or in Israel. And so we definitely have to reframe our relationships internationally so that we can be that positive force. Because as you've noted quite astutely, the power that we have, the influence that we have, can be a massive game changer. It could change the course of humanity if we used it for the good, if we allied with other nations as equals for the good. And we need to do that in every instance, whether we're talking about the abuses against Palestinians, or we're talking about what Saudi Arabia is doing, or the abuses right here at home. You mentioned being the world's policeman. Let's talk about policing right at home. We have colonialism and imperialism and genocide happening at the hands of police right at home. And just like we have that plan to end that internationally, our campaign also has the plan to end the police genocide right here at home. Our 4D plan: demilitarize, defund, disestablish, and devolve power to local communities. Colonialism isn't just an international issue. It seeps into domestic issues and into the psyche, the national societal psyche, and we have to unchain ourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you. Really, because I always rant and rave about how no one pays attention to these issues that are so deep-seated, and it's really frustrating. So it's quite refreshing to hear this coming from a presidential candidate. It really is. And, I'd also ask you about another colonialist or neo-colonialist measure, which is used to strong-arm and coerce other nations: sanctions. The United States loves putting sanctions on other countries, going back decades. I mean, since the Cold War. What is your position on sanctions against Venezuela, against Syria, against Iran? Because these are oftentimes not just arms embargoes, they're also killing civilians, shortages of medicine and food, medical supplies, even parts that have no role in war whatsoever, but are used to really put pressure and exert horrible suffering on these populations. So what's your position on sanctions?
They're genocidal in effect and intent, and they need to come to an end. You know, our campaign out of the Green Race had the most comprehensive COVID-19 plan, and we made a point of connecting the dots because everything is connected to everything else. This is a massive system that's funded to abuse people domestically and internationally. So we made a point of including in that COVID-19 plan ending sanctions because, sadly enough, even in the midst of this global crisis, you have the United States government attempting to ratchet up the sanctions internationally and kill more people. And it really is just unconscionable. So yes, we have to end the sanctions and we have to commit to building more fruitful relationships internationally. This idea that whatever tiff the country has with the government of a particular country because they aren't going along with their imperialist, colonialist, profit-driven line, they are therefore, because of that, going to feel justified to, in effect, kill people in a genocidal way, mass scale. It's just so disgusting and despicable. And we have to call it what it is. I'm very big about calling things for what they are. It is genocide.
Thank you. Like I said, it's really refreshing hearing this honesty and brazen critique, just calling things what they are, because it's very lacking in this political climate.